So today with me, I have on the Black Hole podcast, Zakiya Akerele. She is PhD holder in religious studies and the author of the new book, Dump Your Degree. And it's a guide on how we can utilize college students. That's the we are talking about, how we can utilize our degrees in such a way that we don't end up graduating and having to wait until we are qualified for jobs that we have the degree in or that we need. It's one of those conundrums where you need the experience in order to get the degree, and you need to have the degree in order to get the job. And so it's one of those things which chicken and egg, which should come first. And the key that she's telling us, we got to dump the whole thing. So Zakiya, tell me exactly, if you don't mind, tell the listeners what made you want to write this book and why should we students dump our degree?
So it's not literal, but if you want to dump your degree, you definitely can. A lot of people end up working in fields and industries that are not relevant or related to their degree field. So they definitely can pivot their career in a way where the degree is not utilized. But it's more so me telling people not to make the degree the focus of their career. A lot of times people get degrees and they say, okay, the next logical step is to find a job in that industry. And then when they find themselves unemployed or working jobs that didn't require the degree, or they're underemployed and overqualified, all these different things that they can end up being where the degree is not being utilized. I'm basically saying, hey, stop making that the focus of your career journey and start looking at the sum total of your talents, your skills, and the degree if possible, but other things that you can utilize to develop a career that you enjoy.
So I'm really curious, how did you end up going on this odyssey of discovering that people who have degrees that are basically by the time they go to school for them, by the time that they get out of college, the degrees are practically useless. How did you discover all of these things that people need to do in order to make sure that once they get out of college, they are then useful in terms of the job market for the discipline that they have, and they're able to get the job or the career that they want?
It was me being an unemployed college grad or PhD holder. So I finished my degree in my last degree, which is a PhD in 2010. It was a very challenging time with the recession going on. And so there weren't many jobs that were available, and there were even less jobs available in my discipline. So for a while, I was like, what am I doing? I was depressed. I was like, I have to move back home. And this is, after being away from home since I was 17, I went to college and now finishing a doctorate and having to go back home to try to figure life out. It was not an easy journey. And so when I finally, I was finding jobs here and there, and I came across another PhD holder who was working a job that was, well, like she was, way too overqualified for her, and I were both working it. And she was an older woman. And I said, wait a minute now, this is not where I need to be headed. How do we figure this thing out where, we have this education? How do we use it in a way that doesn't necessarily have to match the industry that we study, but to create very viable careers? And so I started trying to think of things that I could do, seeing it off of my skills, my talents, and also who I know, like developing my connections to open doors for me. So it was basically a personal journey. And then when I became a professor, my students, some of them ended up not getting hired after they graduated. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I can't, have you all experiencing the same thing I went through. How do I work with students to help them prevent and avoid the pitfalls I went down? And so that's kind of how Dump Your Degree started, with me doing research, but also just giving the practical advice that I wish that I had before I started higher education.
Yeah, because it's really fascinating to look at what you have written. And I think it's on your website that you offer people a chance to read the book. It's not out yet.
Mhm,
That's going to be out soon, but you have a chapter on there. It's about
mhm,
how you can, as a student, get skills and you can
mhm,
acquire different sort of just skills. And so you need to
mhm.
focus on skill acquisition. And so, in terms of you as a student, what were some of the skills, I guess, that you wished you'd learned when you were a student to help you further on your journey?
Well, I'm a people person. I call myself an introverted extrovert because I am extroverted, but I kind of tend to like to kind of be very private into myself at times. But, we hear about networking and we think of networking events or what have you, but really relationship building, professional relationship building, and keeping communication open, looking for opportunities and how to add value to other people so that when there's a chance or a time that you may need them to open doors or to head you in the right direction, you have that network, that those connections that could be available to you. I wish I would have learned that or looked at that more when I was in school, as opposed to thinking, okay, now I have the degree, the job will just show up once I put in my application. And it's definitely more to it. And it's definitely a kind of like an art to creating these relationships. It's not just, like I said, going to a network and event and exchanging contacts or whatnot. You have to build these relationships that will benefit you, not just to benefit you, but that are mutually beneficial to make sure that opportunities are always available to you. When people see an opportunity, they think of you. So I wish that I had known that or how to do that when I was in school.
I think you spoke about there were some people that were really helpful and
Mhm.
in different moments of your life that you would say as pivotal. Did you have any mentors that helped you along the way to discover this is what you should be doing? This is the things, pitfalls. Was there anyone there to help you and walk you through that kind of thing?
Yes and no. So I'm not a first generation college grad. A lot of times people, think that first generation college grads have the hardest time navigating higher education. My mother has a bachelor's degree. My grandmother has a master's degree in education. Both of them were educators, though they were educators in a different level than I was, as far as they were, focused on early childhood education and I was higher education. But so they mentored me, encouraged me as far as my higher education path was concerned. But again, and of course I had mentors in my graduate studies. That was a requirement. But as far as navigating my career, I kind of was trial and error, really, just trying to figure out, the path ahead and having mentors that were not necessarily connected to me, but finding mentorship in people who were out, via the internet and things like reading books and things like that. Yeah.
Have there been any books that you would say really inspired you and helped you to achieve those kind of things?
So the one of the more recent books that I really like is You Are a Badass at Making Money. That was one of my favorite books more recently because I like how Jen puts together practical information, but also I'm big on the power of the mind and opening, your consciousness to see opportunity. A lot of times people, when they face challenges, they kind of start from that challenge and they only see the challenge and like I was on a show recently being interviewed about the book, and someone said something like, "Oh, well, it's easier for X, Y, and Z group of people to be successful because they already have X, Y, and Z, and I don't, or we don't." And so starting from the challenge will keep you in a challenging situation if you don't expand your mind, right? And so many people have become successful because they didn't start with the challenge. They focused on the ability to get to where they wanted to get to. So I read a lot of books about overcoming, about using the power of your mind and building confidence to accomplish anything. So that's one book, and things like, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind and all kinds of other books like that really motivate me to have the will to do, to move my career along.
It is really incredible how people take for granted, like, their what's up here, you know? their mind.
Mhm,
And so they don't really, it's not really exercised as much as, a person would exercise their body, but it needs to be,
mhm,
different
mhm,
things you can do. One thing that I've really found to be really helpful in doing that is gratitude, and just being grateful for
mhm.
many different
Yeah,
things. And it's like
yeah.
really weird because one of the things like I'm grateful for, like I want to say like these sunglasses that I have over here. And then what I
Okay.
really found it really interesting about like these sunglasses right over here is that I got
Mhm,
these sunglasses for like I think mowing the lawn. And so I connect
mhm,
my gratefulness to a memory, to a happy memory.
mm,
And so that
I
just
like that.
makes me happy. And so
Mhm,
that makes me just elevates my mood a little bit, you know? And so it's like, oh, like, and again,
mhm,
I didn't mean to do this, but I linked like this item over here to skill acquisition, mowing the lawn. Just in terms of the
No,
yeah,
yeah, I definitely feel that. One of my favorite authors to read is Florence Scovel Shinn, and she was what they would consider like an esoteric teacher of new thought wisdom. And so she was big on like affirming and gratitude, being thankful. So I definitely connect with you there. And one of the affirmations that she said was, I look with wonder at that which is before me. So it could just be the simplest thing, but being grateful actually it's kind of it builds the momentum of more positive things surrounding and coming to you. So I definitely understand you there.
yeah. And so in terms of being grateful, were there any things that you had to, in a weird way, had to force yourself to be grateful about during some hard times that you had throughout your
Yeah.
career?
This whole journey, now looking back, I even though the challenges were hard, being unemployed for a decent amount of time, working jobs that I was overqualified for, it didn't feel good while I was going through it. But now turning, and that's why at the beginning of my book, the dedication is to the reader, and I say to the reader for make their obstacles become opportunities. And that's just basically the end all of what I want you to take away. I want you to come out of this, no matter what situation you're in, whether you're a student, if you are a graduate or a career professional, you're always going to face challenges in your career one way or another. You're going to either face challenges in your education, your career, or both. And so I'm definitely grateful that I was able to come out of my challenges and be able to help guide others so that they can avoid those challenges, or when they face them, they have the tools and the skills to know how to overcome them.
Yeah, that is a really good way of putting that. Yeah. So in terms of the book, they say students should acquire different skills, and
Mhm,
there are different types of skills that you list in the book. And I'm
mhm,
curious because some of them are skills that are, and you tell a story in the chapter about it's a friend of yours in I think it was high school who wanted
mhm,
to become a plumber, and he was really adamant about that. And one of the
mhm,
things that you wrote about was that during like a teacher going around the room, what do you want to be when you grow up, kind of like morning meeting kind of thing. He was
mhm,
really adamant about being a plumber, and the teacher really like questioned him about like look, it's like stop joking around, dude. What do you really want to
mhm,
be? And it's like you
mhm,
guys and a couple of your friends are like, no, he's like he really wants to be a plumber, and it is the idea of careers and things that are really people will look at blue collar work is what it is, blue collar
mhm,
work,
mhm, mhm,
and that it's not really that fancy stuff to do. In terms of students and skill acquisition, do
mhm.
you believe that there should be some sort of way for them to acquire those basic like labor skills so that whenever they need to, they can always pull it out of their pocket and apply it?
I definitely do, but I think that we already have that. The problem is people look down on them, as I mentioned in the book, right? So you don't have to go to college, right? You can just go and acquire trade skills, go to vocational trade school, and do that. Or you can go to college, the traditional, 4-year route or what have you, and still go out and get a trade degree, diploma, certificate. You don't have to do either or. And so college is there for what it's there for. And if you want to work with your hands or have a skilled trade school is there. And again, I just think that people diminish the value of blue collar work when it can be very lucrative. It can be very enjoyable. People think, oh, it's just work that people don't enjoy. As you mentioned, the friend in high school, he enjoyed he enjoyed going to work with his uncle and working with his hands. Everybody doesn't have to be a white collar worker.
Okay, and so the other thing that you put in there is you have a list in here. And the first one is, yeah, learn a trade. Second one is acquire certifications. And so in terms of acquiring certifications, are there any specific certifications that you found in your research that have a really high ROI on them?
It just depends. So of course, anything like, well, not anything, but a lot of tech related engineering, mechanical, like those types of things I've seen have good ROI that actually, when I was looking at this, I was like, these jobs are paying more than I was making as a professor. So and when you say ROI, there are even certification programs that may not have the best, but you can monetize them in the way where they give you a better ROI. So it also is about what you put into the job, right? So you have people, you can say, is a barber making good money? Yeah, maybe not, but then there are celebrity barbers and there are barbers who travel and you know what I'm saying? So it's what you put into a career is what you get out of it as well. So even in relation to degrees, you might get a degree in something that doesn't have a great ROI, but you can monetize it in a way that it does. It ends up having one.
And then the next thing is that I really found interesting, and it is very contrary to the way that the current system, school system, education system has put in place, and that is that students, instead of waiting until their sophomore, junior year, they should start interning immediately for positions at different
Yeah.
offices, different organizations that they want to be a part of. And so as a student, just going into college, first year, how should you convince your advisor you should be interning for certain positions?
You don't need to. You don't have to ask an advisor anything. You can create your own opportunities. Listen, when I was young, I really aspired to become an intern, and my mom knew this. And so I don't know if it's volunteer work, so I don't know if this is illegal, but she said, okay, you want to be an attorney? 12 years old, I had been volunteering with the legal aid, right? Doing work. I would go and volunteer or do shadowing of attorneys. And I'm looking back now, I'm like, was that legal? Because I was running errands, doing all kind of stuff, courthouse, jailhouse, all kind of stuff. But the point is, you don't have to ask permission. You just need to ask for the mentorship or the internship. You create your own internships. So you can find time in your schedule to intern when it's convenient for you. And you don't have to let a professor or an advisor. Of course, if there's a way to get school credit or some type of credit, you can definitely do that. But don't wait on somebody else to give you permission.
Yeah. And so what you did was that another one on your list, yeah, you became an apprentice in that situation in terms of
Mhm,
learning under someone, shadowing people, figuring out how the system works,
mhm,
what you should do. And
mhm,
yeah,
mhm. Definitely. I recommend that highly because then not only with the apprenticeship, you're learning a skilled trade and it will help you, of course, in the long run in your profession, and it'll help you with any certification programs or what have you. And you can create a viable business from that hands-on training. So I highly recommend that.
yeah. And then the last one on your list is to become a freelancer. And
Mhm.
so in your research for the book, have you found any specific freelancer job? I'm supposing that it's going to be again like in the tech sector or coding, something like that, in terms of freelancing positions. But anything that you found in your research?
Oh, it can be in anything. I'm literally, you can monetize and freelance anything. I'm seeing people freelance advice and are making money from I will be your advisor, but it could be anything, writing, it could be editing, it could be anything. I actually, even with this book, most of the matter of fact, my whole team is freelancing, right? I found them through freelance, whether it was my publicist to the designer to the editor to the proofreader everybody was a freelancer, even down to getting media, was someone who was freelancing in PR who actually quit her job because she was making more as a PR freelancer than she was working for a company. And I hear those stories all the time. So you can legit monetize pretty much anything.
Well, that's really incredible, just in terms of the versatility that that even has.
Yeah.
And yeah, and there's so many sites out there. I interviewed a guy on the show about he created his own freelancing site. And it's really like really incredible how many talented people there are out there that have skills and that are well versed in multiple subjects that they could then apply to someone else to
Hmm.
help them to grow their own business or to help them with the project, anything like that. It's just really incredible how many
Yeah.
people are on those sites and that
Mhm.
you can tap into that as a resource to use for sure. Even
Right.
yeah, yeah, and it could be as you are doing, looking for them, going to freelancers to help you with different aspects of what you're doing, or you being a freelancer yourself and filling
Right.
in for certain aspects of someone else's endeavors. Yeah.
Hmm. Yep, definitely.
Yeah. And so you got your degree in religion and religious studies. Why did you do that? Why in religion and religious studies?
It was a passion of mine. I enjoyed. I mentioned I wanted to go to law school, and when I found out you don't need to major in pre-law political science type field, you can pretty much major in anything. I ended up switching my major to philosophy and religion, and I was just fascinated by the topic. I'm fascinated by different cultures, traditions, spiritual, belief systems, and I felt like it gave me not only was I fascinated by the subject, but it also allowed me to understand people and cultures because I love to travel. So it was just something that I liked doing. And I also was really big on like interfaith work, conflict resolution, social justice things, and religion, studying, the subject of religion. People think religion and theology are the same thing, which they're two different fields, but so people always, oh, you went to seminary, and I'm like, no, different, different subject. But it was just something that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah. And even I'm a student of theology. And so even
Hmm.
like looking at the studying theology in different aspects in terms of, as you said, interfaith
Hmm.
dialogue and all the other aspects of looking to other religions and other different fields of faith that then combine into Christianity and other religions as well. And it's
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
incredible how similar and common things are just across thematically across each religion
Yeah.
in such a way that it's kind of spooky whenever you look at it.
Yeah.
But
Yes, definitely.
yeah, it's also very fascinating and wondrous as well.
Hmm. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah. So in terms of you being a professor,
Hmm.
what did you find to be a a degree that students were better off taking to help them further on in their later on career?
One, I mean, I always say I feel like I'm contradicting myself is something that they're passionate about, which might not give them the best return on investment. But if they learn how to make a career out of their passion, then that's what is the best, right? So like I mentioned in the book, an artist student I had who was excellent in my classes, and I found out that he was not doing so well in his other class. And even in my class, when he showed up, he showed up. He was answering questions. He was having like conversation, and My classes were very conversational. I believe in, having healthy discourse and, talking about things and not just listening to me lecture. And so when I found out he was failing in other classes, I'm like, what's going on? I sat him down and come to find out he was an artist. He was a poet. And so we had to have a talk about whether or not he should stay in college. He ended up, as I mentioned in the book, continuing his education. But now, and since then, he has become an artist, right? He has worked in his art and tied his degree into his art. So to me, that's a win. But we're talking more practical, right? When we're talking about which degrees just in and of themselves have the best return on investment. Of course, things in tech, STEM, those types of things. Of course, when people go into like medical fields, that's always going to be something that's going to give you a good return. Yeah. So I would say STEM, tech, those things.
What is your view on student loans in terms of college debt and students taking out loans for so many things, their courses, the cars, the place of residence? What is your view? What is your solution, I guess I'd have to say, to the student loan crisis and students being free from college?
Mhm. I think that's the longest chapter in my book. Don't make a deal with the debtful. And I think student loan debt is evil. I think that is, horrible that you're giving 17, 18-year-olds access to that type of money to go into debt for something that may not give them a return. And so they're starting their life with it. All right. And then they come out with a job making, little money. And so what was the investment wasn't great. And I think I saw online that, somebody said at 18, you can sign up for all this debt for school, but you wouldn't be able to go get a business loan for the same amount. They look at you like you were crazy, right? For the most part, not to say that you can't start a business at 18 and get funded. You could, right? But on average. So I think student loan debt is horrible. I do give ways in which I have found are helpful in paying student loans back, but my number one advice is to not take out student loan debt at all. If you can afford. And that gives options for that, right? Like, starting off at a community college, finding free schools, whether in the US or abroad, or if you have the debt, working for employers that will pay it off, getting your debt forgiven in other ways. So, but I think student loan debt is horrible.
Yeah, and I liked how you put it in your book as a chapter. Don't make a deal with the debtful, the DBVIL. Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like also that you have different spots after your chapters where people can write out, like, this is how I want to apply this chapter over here. Like, what are the next steps I have to do? And I really like that you also have you have quotes from different people at the start of the chapter, and you also have affirmations in there as well. And I'm really curious about the affirmations. How did you go about designing those for your book?
Mhm. So, like I mentioned, I'm a big proponent of the power of the mind. And I guess bringing in my background in ancient thought, new thought, you know, subconscious mind, that kind of what people call mind science. It's one thing to say, I'm going to create a career. There's one thing to like start planning that career or setting goals, but then there's another to affirm and to have the confidence and the knowledge that you can achieve whatever it is that you're setting your mind to. So I put those affirmations in there just as kind of meditative kind of things that you can do to get your mind right. Like I tell people, it first starts in your mind, because you can do all of these things, apply all of these tools, but if you don't feel like you can do it, then it won't work. But if you have the confidence in yourself, then you're there.
Yeah, mindset really is incredible in terms of the focusing and making sure that you're laser focused on a certain thing. And whenever you do that, usually everything you see, and that's when you start to see the opportunities around you to utilize everything. Yeah, and like
Right.
dedication, look, obstacles and opportunities and obstacles. You need to make sure that
Right.
whenever you look around, it's like, oh, like I can use like that thing over there, that thing over there, and you create this step ladder that helps you over like the mountain
Right.
that you need to conquer.
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, how did the pandemic affect you in terms of what you were doing? Were you a professor at that time, or were
I
you?
was. I mentioned that in the book as well. I don't want to give too much away. I want the people to go and buy it, but I'll tell the story. Yeah, it impacted me at the time. I was pregnant with my second child, and in the middle of the pandemic, I had my toddler was about 2 at that time. And so I didn't know what was going, early, nobody knew what this thing was, right? And then, so as my students start saying that, we think this thing is serious, we finally went on a break, like where we were doing remote work, which was good. And then I was teaching in Florida at that time. So I don't know if you follow politics in Florida, but that was one of the states that were like, everybody back in immediately type thing. And I'm like, okay, how do I do this? Because I, at that, when they told me I had to go back in the classroom, it was in the height of the pandemic. And I had just given birth to my daughter and I had a toddler at home. It's like, so am I supposed to just go and put them somewhere so that I can teach? And I was not willing to make that decision. And so, yeah, since then I have transitioned out of the classroom.
And so that was the catalyst that really helped you to just get started and everything. It's really incredible how
Yep.
this pandemic really helped people get things into perspective in terms of
There you go.
making sure it's like I'm doing this thing. I've been doing it for the last 10 years. I don't want to
Right.
keep on doing this. And so it
Right.
gives them,
Right.
it's kind of weird. It's kind of like it gives them an excuse to do what they really want to do. But just,
Exactly.
yeah, it's really sort of unfortunate because except if that didn't happen, then what would you have done? Gone for another 10 years, kept on doing what you were doing before.
Right.
And it's really kind of debilitating in terms of it's that people believe that unless circumstances are unfavorable, that they cannot do what they want to do.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
But
That's,
they,
yeah,
yeah,
a way to look at
yeah,
it. Yeah.
but they definitely, I mean, can do it whenever they want to do it. If they have the wherewithal to do it, absolutely do it. And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
there's no excuse to not do it, kind of thing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, how would you describe your book to a new student, someone just getting into college, looking at
Mhm,
stuff online? It's like, oh, and you mentioned in the book, it's like traditional advertising for colleges has gone out the window mainly, and now it's just like social media posts and the little spots on
mhm,
TV. And so, what would you describe your book as to a new, fresh freshman
mhm.
looking to go into school?
I would tell a freshman that the book would help them. I think that they're in the best position to read the book because it kind of gives them advice all along the way, right? So you're just entering. How do you plan out your academic career? How do you avoid certain financial pitfalls while you're in school? And then what do you do to develop your career while still in school and after you graduate? So it kind of gives them a little bit of a roadmap for starting and also after they finish.
Well, that's nice because it really seems as if it's kind of like the cheat codes to school, and
Yeah.
it helps. Yeah, it helps all the
Like that.
students just. It's like, oh, you got a the left, right, right, left. It was one of those, yeah, kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
got you.
actually like,
I'm gaming.
yeah, and so it just helps you
Yeah.
to just get over that, and so you see this thing swerve out of the way every year, and so it's really
Mhm,
nice and really wonderful that there's a resource like this. Yeah. And so the tagline for your book,
mhm.
how do you repurpose your education, control your career, and gain financial freedom? I'm curious, what is financial freedom to you in terms of this person getting a degree?
Right. Right. So to basically have financial stability where you have the knowledge of how to manage your finances and you don't feel stuck, right? So like me, it was so many things I didn't know as a young adult. And I want you to have the freedom to not be enslaved to debt, whether that's student loan debt, credit card debt, but also the freedom to enjoy life and not feel like you have to do work that you don't enjoy in order to just survive. So having the ability, so I give them little keys about how to budget, how to avoid debt, how to pay down debt, how to plan for retirement, how to retire early, or, give them the insights to go and get that knowledge on their own. Right. And so that's what freedom means to me, to be able to enjoy your career and not feel like you have to live paycheck to paycheck or just to survive.
Yeah, and I really like your example there. Yeah, you, you're not trying to survive. You really want to thrive, want to blossom, want to make sure that
Yes.
you're out there interacting, you're a mover, you're a shaker, you're doing different things, you're doing what you really want to do. And
Right.
it's more like the idea of like I can now take like 2 days off of work and I can go international. I can, go off, I can go visit the pyramids, I can, I could be there for a week and then come back if I want to, that kind of thing. And
Right. Right.
yeah, it is very funny, financial freedom in terms of people currently. It's that they are, and I like how you put it, they're enslaved to that. And it's that idea of I have to work here, I have to do this thing, I have to do it because I need to pay this off in order for me to then go ahead and to finally be free to do all the things that I want to do. But
Right.
yeah, it really is kind of like you're trapped in that cycle. You're enslaved to whether it be organization or the in terms of like student loans and any other kind of debt that has no return on investment
Right.
debt wise. Yeah. And so it doesn't make any sense. But fortunately we have your book, Computer Degree,
Okay.
and it's
Yes.
a guide to repurpose your education, control your career, and to gain that financial freedom. Yeah. Yeah. So, Zakiya, who would you say has been an influence in your life as a person of color, a Black person that has really helped you? Who do you look to? They can be real or they can be fictional.
Oh, oh goodness. Well, as you see, is it the opening of the first person that I quote is Madam C.J. Walker. And she basically is talking about creating your opportunities. And I think about a woman, a Black woman in the time she was living, becoming a millionaire from her own hands, right? She had every reason to have excuses if there were any. And instead of having excuses, she created opportunities. So I think that has been one of the biggest inspirational mentors from afar, as to speak, so to speak. But so many others, but that one stands out. And I think that's why I put her at her quote at the opening of the book.
Yeah, she really is an incredible human
Yes.
person. Yeah. Very, very, very hard things to overcome. And which makes it even the more like sort of like wild that she was able to do what she did despite the times. And that's even incredible in and of
Exactly.
itself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Just it's amazing. So Zakiya, thank you very much for being on this show. I have one
Thank
last
you.
question for you. And
Mhm.
that is if you had the ability to send a worldwide text, what would your
Mhm.
message be?
Ooh, a worldwide text. What am I missing? Oh God. Two things come to mind. Is it only one? Let me think.
You can send both of them if you want to.
I
It
can
can
fit
be
both of
like
them text. Okay.
it
So
can be a
two
long text.
things. Okay. Two things that are like guiding principles for me. One is I would tell people don't conform. Do not conform to what society, other people say, think, but to create your own path. And yeah, that would be the main thing, because I'm a proponent on nonconformity, following your own bliss, your own purpose. And then the other thing would be, as I mentioned several times, is to believe in the power of your own mind and your own abilities, to look within for everything that you need.
I love that do not conform. It's really incredible because I think it's in Romans 12. Um,
Mhm.
it's do not become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. And so it's the
Mhm.
idea that you're just a drone and other drones are doing this
Mhm.
thing. You
Mhm.
must also do this thing. And so it's, yeah, you need to like break out of the system
Mhm.
and make sure that you are an independent thinker. And again, power
That's
of
it.
your own mind, power of your own mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Zakiya, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
Um,
you.
is there anywhere where the listeners and the watchers can get your new book?
Mhm. My book, Dump Your Degree, is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, Walmart. On most online retailers where you can buy books, it's there. So I know a lot of people prefer Amazon, but yeah, it's available IndieBound, all kinds of platforms, so they can check it out there.
Well, that's wonderful, Zakiya. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.